Verbs are perhaps the most important class of words. Many of them are doing words, though not all of them. In this video, we will look at how we can distinguish different kinds of verbs. First, there are lexical verbs that typically denote some activity, such as swim, eat, run, write, clean, ride. We also distinguish a class of verbs that we call auxiliary verbs. These are be, have, do, and the modal auxiliary verbs. What's special about auxiliary verbs is that they always accompany one or more other verbs. For this reason, they are sometimes called helping verbs. Here are some examples of sentences containing the auxiliary verb be, which is followed by a verb that ends in ing, which we call the present participle. She is reading a book. We were travelling by train. In these examples, is and were are present and past tense forms of the auxiliary verb be, and is reading and were travelling can be seen as the progressive forms of the verbs read and travel. We use the progressive when we wish to present an activity or some other situation as ongoing, that is, as being in progress. We also use an auxiliary verb be when we form passive verb forms from active ones. Marvin chewed the sandal. The sandal was chewed by Marvin. In the passive sentence, was is the past tense form of the auxiliary verb be. What's the difference between an active sentence and a passive one? Although active and passive sentences mean the same, they present what goes on in the sentence in a slightly different way. In the active sentence, we see Marvin as actively chewing the sandal. The sentence is about Marvin and what he is doing to the sandal. The passive sentence is about the sandal and what happened to it. Let's now turn to the auxiliary verb have. This verb is followed by another verb that ends in ed or en, which we call a past participle. He has cleaned his room. They had taken some biscuits from the jar. In these examples, have cleaned and had taken can be seen as perfect forms of the verbs clean and take. The first example is a present perfect, the second a past perfect. Let's look at the present perfect in more detail. How does it differ from an ordinary past tense? Well, consider these two sentences. Helen cooked spaghetti last week. Helen has cooked spaghetti. In both cases, Helen's cooking spaghetti happened in the past, but we are more likely to use the second sentence with the present perfect form in a situation where she cooked the spaghetti recently. In this case, there may be a hot plate with spaghetti on the table waiting to be eaten. The present perfect is used to talk about something that happened in the past that is still relevant at the present time. We're more likely to say Helen cooked the spaghetti with a past tense form when we're talking about a situation that's clearly in the past. It's over and done with. For example, when we're talking about what we had for dinner last week. Another use of the present perfect is when hot news is announced. Heat wave has begun. Auxiliaries can be used in questions and they have special negative forms. Is she reading a book? She isn't reading a book. Has he cleaned his room? He hasn't cleaned his room. We can also use the verb do for asking questions and for negative forms. That name rings a bell. That name does ring a bell. Does that name ring a bell? That name doesn't ring a bell. In the second example, that name does ring a bell, the auxiliary do is used for emphasis. There is another group of auxiliary verbs that deserve special attention, namely the modal auxiliary verbs, also called the modals for short. We will discuss them in the next video. Find out more about grammar at Englicious.org.